Well, look at you, looking at me. That's good looking, bubs. Welcome in to our video. We're gonna do this dry tonight because I got to get this out ASAP. I was like, yo, we need to just crank this because this is fresh content. Check this out. Look at this sexy thumbnail right there. Phil, we should do we should do more thumbnails like that, huh? With my face like all surrounded by keen graphics and then looking all stern and bespectacled and ethnically ambiguous. So y'all remember Andrew Lee, right? Ripped to shreds. He had that video. Oh shit, sorry. Our lighting's getting fucked here. Is that better? He had that video where he talked about his experiences as a Chinese American in the death metal world and just what it's like to, you know, deal with the experiences of dealing with a primarily white music scene and, you know, having to like work on the railroads and so forth. And I found it to be a pretty interesting video. I myself was recently on an Amtrak, just admiring the quality of the railroad ties, and I was like, I'm glad to know that Andrew Lee's people are still doing quality work. They are an especially tricky people, a very inscrutable one, dare I say. But good work on those on that Amtrak. Anyway, I gotta see how quick I can do this. I got a lot of thoughts about this video. This just came out today, and it is Old School Death Metal Isn't Real. And I'd be like, okay, I got nothing to say about that one. Like, yeah, he's not wrong, but I tuned in for about 90 seconds, and I was like, now this is a really good, just like, this is a prime example of why you should be listening to someone like Jim Dempsey instead of someone like Andrew Lee or really almost anybody else when talking about heavy metal in any context besides like that's a cool double bass there or like what have you, right? Like, you want to actually get serious talk about fucking metal and like broader context for culture and artistic and etc. Fool, watch this. Now we're going to tune in here really quick.
What's up? It's Andy from the band Ripped to Shreds. Today I'm going to explain to you how you've been lied to for years. Because old school death metal isn't real.
It's not real.
Philosopher Jean Baudrillard published Simulacra and Simulation, a philosophical treatise on semiotics, the philosophy of signs. He postulated that signs, which we use to talk about things, no longer have any origin or relation to consensus reality at all, and that those signs have actually subsumed the original concept and thus become everyone's reality. Welcome to the desert of the real. Old school death metal, as we talk about it today, is a simulation. The 90s brought an explosion of death metal subgenres, from progressive to technical to brutal, or even melodic. Today...
Did you catch that last sentence? The 90s brought an explosion of subgenres from technical to progressive to melodic to brutal. Like, do you want to see some archaeology in action? This guy was born in 1991 or later. How do I know? Because nobody my age or older would say that. That's just not a sentence that would come out of our mouth, dude. That's one right there. That's a teaser. Watch, there's more.
The of the phrase old school death metal refers to any band that can't be neatly described in these subgenres. Marketing copy from underground labels stridently reference the old days, the archaic or vintage or putrid and rotting. But none of these modern bands actually sound anything like bands that could have come from the dawn of death metal. And more importantly, there wasn't a single unified old school sound for modern bands to imitate anyways.
You can hear him over the Morbus Crohn, right?
Theory of simulacra. Death metal exists in the hyper-real, where old school death metal is a sign divorced from any referential meaning, rather than a signifier of music that could have come from the 80s or even the early 90s. It is a symbol of rejection to so-called poser trends like breakdowns or melody or drum samples, and a symbol of fetishism for physical media like cassette tapes or vinyl. The function of those objects aren't relevant. Old school death metal doesn't.
Okay, that was about as far as I got into that video. And I'm like, I'll have a lot to say about more, perhaps, but let's not spend a lot of time on that, right? Let's just do this really quick like. Okay, I'm going to lay out a premise for you really quickly here. It is common if you hear Republican, conservative, right-wing, anti-intellectual, whatever, like, it's common in such circles to talk about the long march through the institutions, how schools went woke, how, you used to get a quality education, but now the liberals have taken over, and so on and so forth. And that is golden age fallacy bullshit. The absolute fact of the matter is the academy as a universe, like in a way that metal is kind of a thing, the academy has always been radical and always been left-wing veering. Just, that's how it is. The reason for that is because they're sequestered from the daily working world, and they are specializing in theory. So it makes sense that they're going to be, like perhaps a bit more in that left veering lane, and also it makes sense that they're going to be very radical. A lot of the stuff we take for granted today as just like the baseline is very radical thought historically. Like, for instance, the idea that you should work 8 hours a day and not work after that or get paid overtime. The idea that your kids should go to school regardless of how much money you have, and like your kids are going to get an education. That's really radical shit, right? And it comes from, so golden age fallacy right there, right? That's a big premise to keep in mind. That's not relevant to the topic as such. That's just an example of why you want to be tuning in to Dempsey to, like, add to your thought diet. You want some nutrition for your whole brain, right? Then let me pluck out some notes from just the first, minute 45 seconds of that video. 4 seconds in, I had to pause it to myself and be like, you've been lied to because old school death metal isn't real. A lie is a specific thing, and it means when you know something to be true and you intentionally misrepresent in a different direction. It is not the same as when you are misinformed and you pass along misinformation. It is not the same as when you communicate something that is an opinion in such a way that it sounds as though a statement of fact. So, it is my advice that you probably should be, just in general, a little bit judicious with your words and watch how you employ the word lie and liar, because some people will not take kindly to being called a liar. They may react badly to it. But even more than that, you should take note when you hear someone say, you've been lied to, you were being lied to, and just from there, pay extra attention to what else is being said, and ask yourself, did the substance of this statement merit the emotional punch of the word lie when misled or misinformed could have easily done the same job, right? So that's a note right there. I'm a stickler for words. You may have noticed I myself try to be a little bit judicious with my language. So that, like when you're talking about the Chinaman, you want to make sure, like, is this a guy a Formosan or is he one of the CCP communists? Oh. Phil informs me that apparently Chinaman is not the preferred nomenclature anymore. Anyway, at 10 seconds in, bro. I'm like 10 minutes in on this. I'm 10 seconds into this video. In 1981, Baudrillard published, this is the second time in the year 2026 that I've heard some rando from the metal universe mention Baudrillard in Simulation and Simulacrum. Never heard a single one in the metal universe drop that reference before this New Year's. This tells me that's an internet wormhole. You saw how I just heard one sentence and I was like, oh, this guy was not born earlier than 1991. Did I do that? Yeah, because people our age don't talk like that. When someone an English-speaking person walks up to you and says, Baudrillard, just know that they got their information from an internet wormhole. How do you know? Because why didn't they say Marshall McLuhan? You could have said Umberto Eco, who is like probably the most famous semiotician, going for having all of those like novels. Personally, I think those novels make him the most effective because they're very useful instructional tools, much more so than a dry academic treatise, which was translated from a different language. Anyway, though, the relevant shot up this is, there is, like, Marshall McLuhan that thought and wrote in English. So if you're talking in the intellectual arena and you go right past that to Baudrillard, I'd be like, you haven't been like spending years just like absorbing shit through osmosis. You found something on the internet and now you think you know something about it. But I'd be like, are we talking semiotics? Step aside, bro. Get out of the way. You know why? Am I the expert here? No. I'm an amateur armchair thinker like anyone. But that means I can smell one. And I can tell when they're not even on my level. Here's the thing about semiotics. It's probably not real, because anyone that claims to know what semiotics actually is cannot give you a good definition or a clear definition of what it is, and if you try to rephrase what they're trying to communicate to you, they will be like, no, that's not it. So what semiotics is a nebulous thing that cannot be defined, but most important, you can't define it. That's the trick of it. It's an academic bullshit thing. I've been in management and I've had experience with intellectual people, so I mean, I know a lot about put-ons and that kind of shit. This is actually my background. I was in the accelerated program, the advanced program in school. Not because any reason besides just I happened to randomly test really well, and so they put me in classes with all of the children of the rich and successful people that were making sure that they were putting the most resources into their kids, besides like taking their kids out of public schools. But for the public school students, I essentially grew up with the wealthiest and the most intelligent, and to this day I'd be like, yo, I'm not impressed by wealth or education, because I've seen these people. They're full of shit. They get money somehow, probably through illicit means, probably through like prohibition and bootlegging or what have you, like other such. But yeah, like, don't fall for that shit, dude. Is it nothing? No, it's not nothing. It's fucking money. And intellect is nice. It's nice to be able to deploy it, but largely it's bullshit. If you can use a marketable trade, like work with your hands, you're in a better position than Jim Dempsey. For all the fucking $5 words I can deploy, right? Like, so that's one right there. Anyway, let's see how quick we can wrap this up. I'm 2 minutes into this video, right? And look at how much shit I'm pulling out of this guy. But yeah, Baudrillard, fuck off, nigga. Like, come on, dude. That's an intellectual poser, or a pseudo-intellectual, or something of that sort. Yeah, did I mention, he said the 90s saw the birth of all these various subgenres, melodic, technical, progressive. That's how I know you weren't born before 1991. You are not less than 10 years younger than me, because we didn't talk like that. And we still don't talk like that, people in my demographic, much less people older than me, because I ain't even the oldest one going. I'm just somehow older than all of them in some other way. I was born 1,000 years old, what can I say? You wish you were this good looking for your age. I really am like 97, seriously. Baudrillard's theory of hyperreality. That's another way, I know, another tell that you're dealing with a pseudo-intellectual or someone that just opened up an internet rabbit hole. Hyperreality is a concept that predates Baudrillard's semiotic work, Simulation and Simulacrum, and probably predates Baudrillard. You want to see some intellectual heft? I mean, watch that video, bro. Like, that's not even communication. He's not really trying to tell you that old school death metal isn't real. He's spending 18 minutes demonstrating his college education or some shit. He's not communicating. He's demonstrating. We'll come back to that. In fact, let's get to that. So, there was a professor back in the day, Ludwig Wittgenstein, who had this idea about a crisis. Well, his idea was like, can language really convey concepts, right? I mean, it's confusing, in-depth shit that I don't even pretend to understand. The upshot of it is he made it sound really snazzy, and it led to, in the coming decades, what is referred to as a crisis in the language from like the 50s, right? The 30s into the 50s. This was an academic thing, but it filtered into the culture because academia filters into culture in the same way that things that we all take for granted were fucking radical and came from the academy. Well, yeah, that's how it works. So the idea was, can language convey experience? And did I say 30s into the 50s? That led right to the beatniks. That is exactly what beat culture was. This experience is like so hip, so crazy, it's so out of sight, man. Like, I can't even, man. That's literally just the crisis in language. Now, how does it manifest today? When your teenage daughter, your sister, your wife, when a woman says, and I was all like, watch that. When they say they were like, there is a little bit of a gesture with it. They may be saying, and I was all like, blah, 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 for real? But they're demonstrating. They are doing a miniature performance of the way that they were. Because I can't just convey the gravity of this by telling you. The words like can't. It was so, and I just kind of got to show you, right? That's why teenage girls say like. It's not because they are pausing to gather thought. It's because they are cueing. Hey, watch this. You're not just listening now. You're watching now. Because I can't just convey it with words. And that has its own attendant consequence and ramifications. Blah, watch me butcher words. We look at it and we'd be like, all right, well, they're bad with speech, right? They like need to think, like. No, they are doing a performance, and that opens up its own vector of thought. It's a tool. The medium is the message. When you're saying, and I was all like, you're not only demonstrating the inability of the words to convey what you mean to say, you have to perform it. You're also directing the attention to yourself. Hey, watch this, because you're not just listening now, you're watching me, right? You like that? You're going to get that kind of shit out of Andrew Lee? No, you're fucking not. You know why? Because he read some shit about Baudrillard on the internet, and now he thinks he's like got a handle on the concept. I'd be like, I don't even know what the fuck I'm talking about. But I know a lot more about this shit than any of these other motherfuckers talking about this shit, right? How do you know? Because I'm going to tell you, I don't know. I ain't a fucking expert. I listen and I think. And I listen. So I'll be like, wait, what did you say? Let me parse that for you. Anyway, yeah. Baudrillard's theory is not Baudrillard's theory. Umberto Eco talked about hyperreality in the 1960s. Probably it was being talked about before Eco talked about it, because none of these ideas are original to us. The ancient Greeks were certainly talking about reality in terms of, is it real? Because metaphysics is a Greek word, and it literally means beyond physics. Now you want to see some intellectual heft deployed to some esoteric shit, watch this. Metaphysical stuff, well, let's not even get into that. It's just my contention. Metaphysical stuff like ESP, telekinesis, like psychics and shit like that, you can dismiss it as bunk, but that's just your dismissal. There could easily be something to it that we can't define. Because the thing about it's metaphysical, so it's beyond physics. It is just shit that we can't measure scientifically. There is the scientifically measurable reality, but there's also reality beyond what we can measure with science, right? So I personally, I don't immediately subscribe to a whole lot in the metaphysical realm, but I equally don't dismiss it out of hand. I'd be like, yo, this is interesting. Let me listen. Let me think about this, right? Because that's what you got to do. You got to know what you don't know. And what you don't know is always exceeds what you do know. That's thinking man shit right there. Now, the last thing I want to wrap this up on. I spent 20 goddamn minutes talking about less than 2 minutes of this video. This is an 18-minute video, bro. I could probably, I could write a fucking master thesis on this shit. Here's why Andrew Lee is just a dumbass. Granted, an impressive sounding one. But, and here's also how I know this guy was not born earlier than 1991. At 1 minute 40 seconds, the last thing we heard in our little clip, he talked about the signs, the signifiers, the fetishism of physical product. And I'd be like, bro, you're clearly from a young age. Look at this shit. I'm going to show you something here. In this book of CDs that I have, I don't have the cases, I don't have the covers. I only got the discs anymore for almost all of these. Because I've fucking chaos-ass lifestyle. I've lost almost everything I own multiple times in life, but I've managed to hold on to the important shit, the discs. And I got here some discs by the very controversial Burrs. And oh, look at this, I even got some controversial discs by, how about that? And I could lose these CDs as easily as I lost the cases and the covers and all that other shit. But the product is out there. You can't take back the art in that form, right? Like, short of just mad burning. But I mean, it's a lot easier to deprogram or decode or whatever the fuck something uploaded onto YouTube. So I don't like that he used the word fetish of old product. I'd be like, yo, you may think that's just old man yelling at clouds, but I'd be like, hey man, I got the music in hand. What have you got? You literally don't have anything. You've got your portal to it, but there's nothing real there. You want to talk about hyper reality? That's reality. This is hyper reality. That is an important distinction. And why is it an important distinction? It's not for the most part. Most music, you're going to be like, yeah, you know what? I listen to my albums from here on this thing when I'm not sitting next to a CD player. Because no one makes compact discs players anymore, or like the portable ones anymore. Goddamn worth gold to find a Sony CD man, like a disc man that works, right? But, that said, this is the hyper reality. And this is actual physical product. So, the fetish line irked me, and it also irked me for this other reason. Fetish is another word, like liar. It has a specific context. Fetish, it's a worship object. The common general usage of fetish is the sexual one, right? And a fetish is distinct from a kink in that a kink is like maybe whatever your thing is, like it appeals to you, right? It gets you in the mood, right? The fetish is the thing where you have to, like, you absolutely have to. So this is maybe a poor example, but the common, like, association to fetish. So after and you're going to bed. This has been my rule my entire marriage. My wife, like, initially was just like, wow, you're weird about that. But I was like, no, this is my rule. No fucking socks in bed. So it's kind of like a foot fetish. Not about, like, the sex part, but about sleeping. I'd be like, yo, you're sleeping in the bed with me? Don't be wearing no fucking socks. The reason for that one is because, like, at some point in time, she's going to, like, up against my leg, right? Or on my back if I'm, like... And I'd just be like, all right, you know what? That's fine, but I don't want your grimy-ass, like, used-ass, fucking dry, crunchy-ass sock on your foot in that instance, right? Like, I don't... Maybe if you, like, put on fresh socks, like, before bed, but even then, like... So that was our thing, right? And that would be, if it was, like, about the sex, not the sleep, then that would be, like, the fetish side, because I'd be like, during the sex, like, whatever, but, like, during the sleep, like, no, you not in my bed. Just not having it. We can't. So that's like the fetish kind of thing, right? So that irked me too. Just to where, like, you're throwing around words that you caught on to from, like, whatever your source was, and it's bullshit. But this is the thing. It's just a big exercise in intellectual masturbation. He's not trying to communicate to you that old school death metal is a simulation or a simulacrum and devoid of any content that connects it to actual old school death metal. That's a given. We all know that. It's 40 years on. I am here to remind people of that because I think a lot of YouTubers are kind of giving out false impressions and misinformation. But they're not lying. They don't realize. Or they aren't playing the tape through to the end, or I don't know, they're living in the charade. But if it's real to you, it's real to you. Varg isn't lying when he says that Euronymous wanted to kill him and he killed Euronymous in self-defense. He was probably lying the first few times he said it, but you say that shit for 20 years plus and you're going to believe it. So, anyway, yeah, that's a big thing that I'm all about is like the nature of reality, the nature of belief, shit like that. And I'd be like, all right, you want to step up into this poser? That's fine, but you know what? Drop your video and then send it this way, because I'm gonna rip that to shreds. All right, pun firmly not actually intended. That was a fortuitous little happening there. Just because the Chinaman's band is ripped to shreds. Oh, I'm sorry, Phil. The Asian American band ripped to shreds. Anyway, last thing here. You see this? Like, what are we at? 30 minutes now for this? Just a little irony. Irony is another word that gets misused a lot, tossed around a lot. But watch this.
It's the cheapest way to send music to your pen pal from another country. OSDM does it because that's
you see
how
that?
you perform
That
being
jump?
old school. And
There it was.
is gone because
He made a video talking about hyperreality, and then he edited the pauses out. That is irony, my friend. High fucking irony. Me personally, I'd be like, I understand why people do that. I don't do that for this reason. That bespeaks a lack of confidence. I'd be like, is what you're saying have any substance? Are you saying something of importance? You need to chop it into a TikTok thing? You need to spend however many hours? I'd just be like, yo, I got something to say, and because I'm saying it, it's worthwhile. Or rather, because it's worthwhile, I'm going to say it. But the tautology works in that way. I'd be like, it's worthwhile, so I'm going to say it. And I said it, thus it's worthwhile. That is called a tautology. You like that? You've now been taught. Let's see Andrew Lee pull that kind of shit. That's what you get from being a native speaker of English. I'm going overboard with that, I'm sorry. But you know what? You open that door and I'm going to walk right through it. I'm going to be like, you know what, guy? You seriously want to open that door? And he just opens all sorts of doors for me. It's kind of nice. I'd be like, wow. I'm like this white guy with this Chinese guy just opening doors for me. Yeah, we could do this all night too. Anyway, I'm running way long and yeah. But there might be more of this to come because there's still 16 minutes in that fucking video. Jesus Christ. I saw Marks in the comments. Oh. Let me bait my own breath. Holy hell. Jim Dempsey. Talking shit. On the entire internet. One man at a time. For the betterment of mankind. Whew. That was a long one, wasn't it? Thank you for staying with us. I think we all learned something today. And yes, Lord willing, and grants us, Phil and myself, the breath to produce more and yourself to watch more. We'll be back for some more dipping out.